there's been times I've gotten into the shock rooms where doctors have been like, everybody out right now. He's the most important person in the room. And for that moment, I'm just like, yeah, but that's typically not what we get.
Hello and welcome to the YXT podcast. My name is Jason and I will be your x-ray tech for today. And today we got a guest. I got Christopher. Christopher is going to join us today. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, about his experience in the field and some other things. So it's going to be a great interview. Christopher, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Chris or Christopher. I've been an x-ray tech since I graduated in 2019. I originally started out my career in Los Angeles, and now I'm in Texas. I just work in diagnostic radiology right now, and graveyard shift. So kind of where I'm at the moment.
Awesome, cool. And we're going to talk a little bit about the graveyard shift. That's interesting. But you said you came from LA to Texas. That's awesome. So how was LA and then coming to Texas?
Well, I'm originally from Texas. But I moved to Los Angeles when I was 14 with my mom, trying to pursue acting and be a famous child actor. Didn't work out. And so I spent 20 years there. And so coming back to Texas, it was just, coming back home. It was kind of a cool experience because like I never drove in Texas. So it's like I don't know my way around. So it's like I'm brand new to the city, but also like I grew up here. So I'll drive by stuff and be like, oh, that's where I played Little League and stuff like that. So it's kind of a cool little experience. I like it. It's better than California for me.
Probably not as fast as LA, but there's things going on here in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm in a pretty big city, but I think I didn't want to move to like a rural area and be too slow because like I know myself really well and I'd just be bored to death. I need to be able to run to Target in 5 minutes if I need to. But I also, it's a little bit slower than Los Angeles. It's a good happy medium for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, welcome back to Texas,
Thank you.
And that's a great thing with this field too, is you could move around, right? I mean, things might be a little different in some states, but there's a lot of opportunities in radiology and x-ray diagnostic in different states, different areas, and different pace. If you want that faster pace, it's there. If you want the slower pace, that's there too, right? Let's talk a little bit about a day in the life of an x-ray tech, right? So you said you work graveyard. So what is that like? What's a typical day working the graveyard shift?
So I work at a level 1 trauma center. So one of the reasons why I like either the evening or the graveyard shift is because that's generally, I'll say, when the most like exciting trauma cases start popping up in the day. I think around 3 o'clock is when a lot of the trauma starts rolling in. I've seen some really bad stuff on day shift, but people start drinking, they start partying, they start getting in fights, they start getting in car accidents, they start shooting each other in more of the afternoon, evening, nighttime. So that's one of the reasons why I like working graveyard. People always say that I'm like kind of an adrenaline junkie, and I'm absolutely not. Like I have no interest in jumping out of an airplane, but I do really like the fast-paced, excitement, high pressure, life-saving decisions and moments kind of thing of the hospital on night shift. So like when I go in, my work day starts at 11 p.m. So I sleep a lot during the day. It's always for me finding a fine balance between getting enough sleep and still being able to be productive in the day before I go to work, laundry, all that kind of stuff. So I'm always trying to find that balance. So for me, I start out 11 p.m. going to the hospital. Usually I survive on caffeine. So, take an energy drink on the way. By the time I get there, I'm all pumped up and ready to go. And a lot of times, as soon as I walk in, the trauma pager is going off. In Los Angeles, we called those TTAs, it was Trauma Team Activate. And here, this hospital, it's rated in codes. So code 1 is, the most critical: gunshots, stabbings, they were in cardiac arrest. Code 2s are like really severe car accidents or assaults, and code 3s are usually just like assaults, fainting, stuff like that. And that's kind of like just how my day starts. It's a lot of big multiple exam cases down in the shock rooms and the ER portably. And then halfway through the nights when we have to start doing portables. So that gets to be like the nightly routine portables for all the heart surgery patients, intubations, checking ET tubes, all that stuff.
Any advice for somebody who's maybe going to take on that shift, right? Because that's a great shift. Usually tends to pay a little bit more too, right? Like there's a lot of benefits to working that shift. But any tips that you would give to somebody considering a night or graveyard shift?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that every shift, in my opinion, has its pluses and minuses, right? Like day shift, you have a little bit more normal routine schedule. Evening shift, I always say is like, the 3 to 11. It's great if you're single and you get to sleep in. You stay up late, watch Netflix as soon as you get off at like midnight. You still can sleep in, get things done in the day, then go to work. Yeah. If you're married or in a relationship and your schedules are a little different, that makes it harder. Graveyard does pay more. I get about a $3.25 differential pay on top of my base pay for working graveyard. Evening shift gets like 2 something, and day shift just gets their flat rate. Right. So for me, that's part of the incentive, obviously. I will say that it's probably the easier shift to get into because nobody wants to work it, Sure. Unless they're night people or it works best for their schedule. So it's usually the one that will be open or the most online for an application, which also is the reason I'd say most new graduates get put into that position. Because it's kind of like just getting your foot in the door, right? It's like get your foot in the door, put your time in. When a better position opens up on a different shift, if you want to, you can then apply for it. Yeah. For me, I like it. I don't know, it works for me. It works for my schedule. Like I said, the hardest thing is just finding that work-life balance, because like when I get off on the weekends, my family wants to see me or do birthdays or whatever. And I know I have about a set amount of hours that I can be awake before I'll fall asleep where I'm sitting, or what have you. So the sleep is probably the hardest part of it, is doing that. I mean, I get my weekends turned around all the time. Like if I go to sleep as soon as I get home on a Saturday, because I work Monday through Friday, right. I won't be able to go to sleep that night, and then the whole weekend, I'm working I'm living the same schedule as the graveyard shift during the week. So wow. That's the difficult part.
Yeah, and like you said, like in the night shifts, it's good for starting out, gain experience, and then eventually, I think people tend to take on another shift eventually, right? Like I think after a while, or some stay with the night shift because once you're in that routine, it works out pretty good. You start to align things with the shift. So that's always a good opportunity, right? The graveyard.
Yeah, I hear people say all the time that like people who work graveyard for like 20 years, die earlier. I don't know if that's true, but I will say like it's very convenient for getting things done, doctor's appointments, all that stuff. You don't have to take off, and it's just it's good in the sense that you can get your trauma experience, like you said. And one of the things I like about it, and I hear a lot of people say, is that there's no administration really there at night. So like it's kind of like you can just work, take care of your business, don't have to like be worrying about being micromanaged, and at the same time you just kind of, it's a little bit quieter. Yeah. The hospital, I like that. I hate when it comes morning shift. I've worked doubles where I go from graveyard shift where it's quiet, the hospital's empty, and I work a 16-hour shift into morning, and I just can't deal with that energy. Like going from the quiet calmness to like the chaotic part of the day. It's terrible.
2 different vibes, huh? 2 different vibes. Yeah, absolutely. No, I get it. And I think there's a lot of techs that don't like to be micromanaged, right? In situations where a lot of times you just have to think on the spot and make decisions and, say kind of like, trust me, I'll get it done. So what are some duties involved in working with the hospital?
So there's a lot of departments at the hospital, right? There's orthopedics, outpatient, There's fluoroscopy where you do all the, the barium studies and all that stuff. There's the ER, there's portable, and there's OR. I'd say those are the main department areas. On graveyard shift, I don't have to do some of those things at all. I don't have to do orthopedic outpatient, and I don't have to do fluoro unless it's like stat cases, right? I mostly focus on portables, ER traumas, and OR. I'd say a slight difference, for like a hospital versus like a clinic or something. At a clinic, you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for kind of cleaning, stocking, running diagnostics, doing a bunch of stuff. At a hospital, some of those responsibilities are split between shifts. Right. Graveyard shift, we kind of just go in and take care of business and just try to clean up the work list before morning shift. Nice. But I think it's cool because at a hospital for me, especially a level 1 trauma center, every day is different. That's what I kind of live for, is that variety. I hated working at a clinic. I'll tell you right now, like I hated doing that. I was bored to death. I just felt like I was just a conveyor belt of x-rays, right, all day, just trying to get up as fast as I can. And I'm really big on patient care. And it's hard to do that when you're doing 100 exams by yourself in a day in 8 hours, Right. But the variety you get at the hospital, go in one day and you're doing portables. You go in the next day and you got somebody that's, got a limb blown off, or ripped off from a car accident. And then you go in the next day and you're doing OR. And you may be doing the OR case for the ortho doctors for the gunshot guy you did 2 days ago, so you get to mix it up. I'm very self-aware in the fact that I know what I need to be happy. And I'm willing to take a little bit less money sometimes to enjoy what I do and be happy. So like, I'm not the kind of tech, and some people are, that's like just happy doing sprained ankles all day. Like I like to mix it up with the exciting stuff and the challenging cases, and having to think outside the box and not just shoot something that's a walkie-talkie textbook. That's me. That's kind of what excites me in the day.
That's awesome. And with radiology, you could get that, right? Like different variety and what you're more comfortable with or willing to experience. So what are some things that somebody should know coming into a graveyard shift or working in a hospital?
Looking at it from like a new grad perspective, right? You're not going to know everything probably until be well-rounded, at least until you've been a full licensed tech for about 2 years, I would say, because you can only get experience in your clinicals with what comes in coincidentally while you're in clinicals, right? You're not going to see everything. And then on top of that, like, you're really learning while you're in school the textbook way of doing things, right? And so like for me, my experience was when I entered the hospital, there's a lot of things that I didn't see, or things I didn't shoot, while I was a student. And then there's a lot of things like I had to learn going to trauma. You're going to get patients that are all twisted up in all kinds of directions. And your job is to try to make it look textbook when you're not able to shoot a textbook, and that's what I like. Because I have the creative background. Like I like that. Like I love photography. I do that as a hobby. So I like trying to look at a situation, and it's like a challenge for me to get the shot that most techs would put unable due to trauma. I put a note to the radiologist, like unable to get all 3 views due to patient condition, whatever. Like for me, it's not like trying to make somebody look bad. It's me trying to like challenge myself to be like, why can I get the shot when other techs won't, In order to do that, I had to ask a lot of questions as a student, or I mean, as a new tech. It's a lot of things I didn't know how to shoot due to trauma. And luckily, when I worked at LA County Hospital, those were some of the best techs I've ever worked with in my entire life. Like every single person had a skill set that I did not understand how they had, new techs, veteran techs. And I just kind of soaked up as much of that like a sponge as I could. And like, if I didn't know how to shoot something, I would go get somebody, ask for help. They'd show me some weird way of shooting it. and I would just put that in my tool bag, you
Right.
know, so that the next time I saw a similar situation, I could pull that out and get the shot, you know. So I'll say, like, as a new tech, you're not gonna know how to do everything, and it's gonna be overwhelming, and you're gonna doubt yourself sometimes and stuff. And like the only way to do it is to get as much experience, try to shoot as many things, walk through fear and uncomfortability.
Mm.
Um, and that's, you know, how I kind of had to start out. You know, I entered the hospital during COVID.
Mm.
And I was grateful for that because I had a lot of my classmates and people I knew who, like, and just techs I knew who chose to not work and just kind of stay at home and collect unemployment
Right.
to be safe. And I didn't want that to be on my resume. I didn't want that gap time to be on my resume and have to explain why during a, you know, worldwide pandemic I chose not to work. And I also, to be honest, wanted the experience.
Right.
Because that's kind of like for a lot of people, once in a lifetime experience to put, you know, in your tool bag of having worked that.
Absolutely. Great answer. Yeah, absolutely. Once in a lifetime for sure. There might be another pandemic, you know, we just don't know when.
Might be. Thought it was once in a lifetime. Might be the
Yeah.
third in 3 years.
Yeah. No, but this one was definitely different for sure. This one was on a grand scale. I mean, for sure, was on a grand scale. And to say you were part of that, you know, you can't undo that. You know, I mean, you got that, you have that experience, you lived through that, and now moving forward, that could help somebody or help yourself as in your own resume, which is great. So that kind of leads to the next question, right? Because I agree with all the, you know, creativity and all that stuff. So if someone were to ask, you know, is becoming an X-ray tech hard? How would you answer that question? Is becoming an X-ray tech hard?
I think I was actually probably my biggest obstacle was myself, because I wasn't good at math. I doubted all my abilities, kind of going into like the physics aspect of it and all that stuff. But I still say to this day, I always tell people the hardest part of becoming an X-ray tech for me is just getting into a program. That's literally the biggest hurdle. I don't know what the schools that you went to were like, but I went to a community college, and most of the community colleges in Los Angeles are all lottery programs. They're not based on your grades. They're not based on point systems. They're not based on only the best people that qualify to get in. You can have all straight A's, and somebody with all C's gets in because a computer randomly selects who gets in. So I knew I just was blessed. Fortunately, I think 144 people applied the year that I got in, and only 22 people allegedly were randomly selected, and I got selected my very first try. And I just kind of put that in God's hands, you know. I was like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, you know. And I luckily got in, but I was in there in the program with people who it was their fourth year applying. And then the other, you know, option, if you don't want to go that route, is a for-profit school. And I trained people at the clinic I worked at that went to for-profit schools, and they, you know, I virtually paid nothing for my education. They were paying $60,000 in federal school loans to go to a school that was just churning out techs, not training at a very good hospital, and working with mediocre equipment. And so I always say the hardest part is just getting into a program. After that, it's up to you. It's whatever work you put into it. I've always thought it was odd though that like this line of work, you don't ever really get to know if you like it or not until you're already kind of committed to it, because you don't ever get to be in a hospital working on a patient, pushing that X-ray button until you're already a few years into just striving for it. So some people figure out that they don't like it at that point.
Yeah, that's facts right there. You know, it's all training, preparing, but then once you get to the real world, then you can decide, you know, and for the most part, I think most people fall in love at that point. Like, whoa, like I love this, like, and I want more, and I want to continue learning. And some even regret, I think, like, let's say they didn't put in as much work at that point. Some people, I feel like they regret, like, I should have done more practice. I should have studied a little harder, because now I'm in a situation where that could have benefited me, you know. Again, you're learning on the spot too. You mentioned one thing, you use the term registry. Can you explain registry? I'm from Texas, so I literally didn't, I wasn't familiar myself with it.
I've learned since coming to Texas that I feel like registry is more of a California term that's used. I think that in other places like Texas and stuff, they call it travel.
Sure.
Um, but it's from what I've heard, more travel, the term travel being used more lately is it's kind of like contract jobs where you're contracted for 3 months or longer. And a lot of times you can't work other places when you're under contract. In California, we called it registry, which were kind of basically like X-ray temp agencies. And it was a great way to kind of maintain your skills fresh out of school and also kind of get, it's almost like an audition for the hospital to hire you, which was great. Uh, and so I signed up with a registry right out of school, and I was sent to work at a hospital while I was doing the clinical job. I got the clinical job just to maintain my skills right out of school, but I didn't want to only have a clinic on my resume because I knew eventually I wanted to go to a hospital. So I did the registry at night, graveyard, and did clinics during the day for my 9 to 5 job. And basically, what it was initially for me was it was as needed, right? So I would be getting off work from the clinic, and I would get a call from the registry saying, "Hey, the hospital had a call out tonight. They want to know if you want to come in and work the spot." So it was kind of like never guaranteed work, never really planned in advance. Sometimes they would call me a few days in advance and be like, "Hey, can you work Thursday and Friday this week?" That's it, sure. So I'd know. But a lot of times it was somebody called out sick. They called me in so they wouldn't be short. And so that was kind of my hospital experience for about 2 years.
Nice.
With working contract, and I became like the go-to person, which the registry loves because you're making them money and you're dependable for them because they charge about double what you're getting paid for you because they get paid from the hospital and you get paid. So the more you say yes, the more they'll call you first. And I was just in a position where I couldn't really afford to not be called. So financially, so every single time they called me, I said yes, and I really got to get to know all the techs at the hospital. This hospital specifically was kind of hard to get hired into based on the union, but they were like, as soon as we have a spot available, we want to hire you. And but it was a really good for references too.
Yeah.
Because I had the manager of the department saying, Kris is a workhorse. He's the most dependable guy I have. He never complains. He always does what he's asked. And, you build a reputation like that. Right. And from that, I got a call and said, "Hey, are you happy at the clinic you're at?" I said, "Absolutely not." And they're like, "Well, we have an opportunity for you to go work at LA County's Level 1 Trauma Center." And I was really nervous about it. Yeah. Because the trauma aspect scared the crap out of me. Because I'd never done gunshot wounds and stabbings and all that stuff. I was told, when we get a page, you stand at the door and you wait for that ambulance to arrive. And as soon as they arrive, they start calling out orders for X-ray, this, that, and you just go in there with your portable, shoot it real quick, and get out before they have to go to the OR or they die or what have you.
Right.
And it scared me. I didn't have confidence in my skills at the time. But my wife was really a big supporter. She talked to me on the phone and she was just like, you're extremely unhappy with where you're at right now. So much so to the point where it's affecting our marriage because you're so burnt out from the clinic. You're so overworked, underpaid that you're coming home so stressed out and frustrated that it's affecting our communication.
Right. And
so it was kind of a risk I was taking to give up a secure job to go work full-time registry.
Right.
But I still say to this day, the best decision I ever made. I got the most valuable experience of my life working there. I met some of the best techs. After 3 days, they asked me to apply for a full-time position.
Nice.
And the first time I ever went down there, I was shaking, pushing the portable to do a stabbing victim as my first trauma. I was like, I'm gonna kill this guy. I know it. Somehow I'm gonna make a mistake. And this guy's gonna die, and it's gonna be my fault, And I told myself, I said, if I want to be the most well-rounded tech that I can be, I'm not trying to be the best tech in the world, but if I can be the best tech I can be, I'm not gonna get that experience unless I put myself in it, walk through the uncomfortability and fear of it, and get used to it and get the experience. And so that's what I did every time working the registry job. Every single time the trauma pager went off, I was like, in my soul, I was like, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, but like out my mouth was, I got it, I
Right.
got it, I got it, until like I saw some of the worst stuff in the world, and was totally calm, like ice water in my veins, because I had done it so much and was so comfortable with my skills at that point. And that was from registry, which allowed me then to get hired when I moved to Texas at one of the level 1 trauma centers here, and go in there, without me getting much training, because I had seen so much stuff
Right.
during that contract.
That confidence, right? And I think as a technologist, you need that, right? I think that's like a necessity. And some of that also comes from just believing in your skills and your training. Because I think that's the only real way is just like take it back to basics and stay calm, right? Like take a deep breath, address the situation, and then afterwards is where you could be like, what just happened? Like take a second and be like, wow, did I just do that? Did that just happen? And so
Yeah, I mean, my professor in school used to say, he'd say, and I still quote this to this day because it makes so much sense, right? The master of repetition is the master of all skills,
nice.
right? Like if you do something enough times, you will become proficient at it.
Right.
You just have to do it enough times,
Yeah.
So like, I mean, the first time I ever did a code blue, the patient, I put the cassette under for a chest x-ray, and he died on my board.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first time I'd ever had that happen. There's no way that they can prepare you in school to deal with that. Like, there's no way to recreate the real feelings, the real pressure, the real panic or whatever, as in that real life situation in a school
Right.
environment. This artificially. So at that point, like, I just had to be proficient enough in my skills, confident enough in knowing how to use my equipment to be able to handle the situation. I remember telling myself, like you just said, during the moment, I was like, I had to go in there and shoot like 3 x-rays, right? I kept doing chest, abdomen, chest, abdomen. I was just basically pulling this guy's limp body up and down the plate, and blood was everywhere and stuff. And it wasn't even a trauma. It was like a heart surgery patient that had like getting intubated. It was just a mess. And I remember thinking to myself, like you just said, during the time, I was like, you can freak out later. Right now, you have to stay calm in this moment to do your job, And I got out of there, and I remember walking away, and like everybody was asking me, like friends were like, "Are you okay after seeing that?" Like mentally.
Right.
And I was like, "I'm fine." Like I have more of a feeling of gratitude
Right.
that like I'm, I used to work at a coffee shop, and now I'm part of the team
Right.
that's helping save this guy's life. The fact that I had gotten to that place in my life from where I used to be,
Right.
it was more of a gratitude moment. But yeah, I walked out of there shaking, kind of like, I need a cigarette now. No.
Well deserved, right? Well deserved. Why not? Yeah, that's awesome. That's crazy. And see, I think not so many people are familiar with our field. It's usually, oh, thank you, doctors, thank you, nurses, which is great. But I think medical imaging plays a big part in saving somebody's life, right? And a lot of times it could look easy because yeah, you're just doing an x-ray of a hand on a walk-in patient. But other times you're in that ER department and they're waiting for your images. They're like to determine what's going to happen here, which is incredible. But thank you for sharing that. And speaking about sharing, one of the great things that we have available now is social media. And you seem to be pretty active on social media with the tag name Level 1 Drama Tech, right? Let's talk a little bit about your social media and your thoughts on social media in general.
I kind of just fell into that because I was doing it for fun. I don't know. During the pandemic, I saw a lot of nurses and medical people who were starting comedy channels and still doing TikToks and different stuff. And I didn't have much experience in it, but I saw them doing it. I just thought it looked fun. And I saw them making a lot of money off of it too. Like I follow a bunch of medical people that have like comedy channels, but one of the ones I'll say is I've seen blow up the most is Rachel Santana. She's a nurse from I think Miami, and you know, getting sponsorships and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm just doing this for fun because I enjoy it. If I get some free figs out of it, like that's even better, you know.
Right.
But I started making the. If you look back at my early videos, they were bad. Like I didn't know they were. I didn't know how to use. I knew how to use TikTok kind of to edit reels. I didn't know how to use Instagram reels, and so that was a learning curve for me. And they were really simple videos starting out. And if you look at my progression, they got a little bit more like creative or a little bit more complex, you know, edits. But I started posting them on my personal Instagram, and my personal Instagram is private. And so like I was like, well, if I want to get any kind of reach, I'm gonna have to either open up my personal Instagram, which opens me up to like weirdos, you know, seeing all my personal stuff, or I'm gonna have to create a new one. So I went with the route of creating a separate like comedy channel page, and that was level one. I work in level one trauma, and I just thought level one drama tech was kind of funny, you know, play on words. And I hope I'm not too dramatic, but I started that, and it's kind of built. It's built some momentum quickly. I mean, like I haven't gotten viral off of one video and get like a million followers. I have like probably a little over 500 now.
Nice.
But the coolest experience for me has been I've gotten to connect with specifically, I'll say X-ray techs all over the United States and even all over the world. Like I have X-ray techs that are in school in like Nigeria messaging me and like talking to me, or like PCAs in Canada who were messaging me saying, I'm thinking about getting into X-ray from PCA and want to know more about the field. Can you tell me more? I've had people who were students at my old school start following me, and they don't realize that I went to their same school, and we connect and start talking. And I've made some also really close friends on there who we've exchanged phone numbers and stuff. And like, you know, it's just been a great way to meet people in the same line of work. It's been fun, creative outlet for me. I enjoy it. And if anything more ever comes from it, like that's awesome. But it's not really my purpose for doing it.
Hint off Figs, right? Say, hey Figs, we got level one drama tech.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into Figs yet, but I will say, shout out to Dr. Wolf Apparel. They sent me a couple scrub caps because they know I like scrub caps, and I tried two of them, and like I'm not a paid ad, not a plug. I'm just a fan. Like it's a cool scrub company. I get compliments a lot of times at work, so that's probably the one free thing that I've gotten from doing my page. And then you, like, it's a very cool thing for you to ask me to do the podcast. I mean, I've always had this like secret desire to have my own radio show.
Nice.
And I've never done it. And podcasts make that possible. I've still never done it. But I was really excited to have you reach out about this.
Yeah, thank you. No, happy to have you on. And when you are ready to you know, start that podcast, you know, you got a platform to introduce it and guests that we could reach out to, right? So networking, I think networking is very important. It really, you know, grow from networking. So I'm big on social media. You know, I think our field's just at the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of great creators out there, much needed content on different levels, even if it's just comedy, which I love your content. You're got some hilarious content, but at the same time, you're still spitting facts. Like there's still facts, you know, you just find a funny way.
Thank you. That's what I think my focus has been on, is relatable stuff that like we all kind of think or talk about at work, and just making it funny. A lot of times I'll just like listen to other reels and audios, and I'll be like, okay, that's funny, but how can I make it about X-ray? You know, and I'll try to do that. Which is cool because like I feel like I try to I mostly focus on X-ray, but I get other medical doctors and people and nurses and stuff who follow me just because it's general hospital humor.
As a kid, you did some acting. You did some acting as a kid?
Yeah. I moved out to Los Angeles. At the time I was hanging out with a bunch of kid actors off like Nickelodeon, Disney. Like I kind of ran around a little bit with Hilary Duff and Xena Gray from Snow Day and Josh Peck lived at my apartment complex. There's like a bunch of stuff like that. And I went to a lot of like classes and a bunch of stuff. I never blew up or anything. I will say I did I wasn't Mr. Deeds with Adam Sandler.
Really?
Um,
Wow.
but my part got cut out. It was a really traumatic experience for me because like I went to the movie theater with my entire family and we're all waiting. It's getting closer to the end of the movie. And like my mom's like, oh, this isn't good. And my part got completely cut out.
Oh man.
But it was still cool. I got to meet Adam Sandler. I still got paid, you know. I did a few shows here and there for like ABC Family for a little while as like a reoccurring little thing and stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. You
Wow.
would also know because like I've posted some of my old photos and videos from like my early 20s, but you would never recognize me today because like I have no hair now, you know. And at the time I had hair like down to here.
Really?
And like
Okay.
I was a big fan of like Johnny Depp and all that stuff. So I was like wearing like eyeliner and black nail polish. It was the whole like, mom, it's not a phase, but it ended up being a phase kind of.
You know, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to point out is like, you know, just because you're wearing scrubs doesn't mean you're just limited to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
X-ray techs and other healthcare professionals, there's so much more than just, you know, a technologist or what their role is there. It's like everybody's got this story and some have incredible stories. So that's awesome for you to share. Mr. Deeds is a great movie, by the way. That's a pretty big,
Yeah,
that's a
I
big
like it.
deal.
It's funny because like like I think I said earlier, I never expected to get into the medical field at all, whatsoever. And I moved out to be an actor like 14. I found myself in my early 20s. I went through some rough things in my life personally and stuff, and like I found myself kind of getting myself back together at working at a coffee shop,
Hmm.
you know. And I'll talk about this for students or people thinking about getting into X-rays. Like I was at a point in my life where I was trying to find my path in life, but didn't know at all what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I was like, how do you pick? I had never gone to school. I never gone to college, right? I was like, how do you pick what you're going to do for the rest of your life?
Hmm.
And that sounds very overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
And I had two people give me advice. They said, one said, it doesn't have to be what you do for the rest of your life, but it can be what you do for now until you find something else you like doing or help pay for you to do something else. And the other thing somebody said was, if you don't hurry up and pick anything, one day you're going to wake up and you've never picked anything and you're going to be old, but in the same place that you are now. Both those things made a lot of sense to me. So, and the other person also said, he goes, why don't you start talking to people that have cool jobs and ask them how they got into it? And one of my close friends was an x-ray tech, but he was a limited x-ray tech. And he was like, I started picking his brain and I was working at a cupcake shop and a coffee shop. I'm like sitting at the cupcake shop, texting him like, hey, how did you get into x-ray? And I thought it was so cool because he was a young, hit dude, outside of work. You would never expect he had like a professional job like that. And like that kind of juxtapose, thing was like interesting to me. And he went to a for-profit school, got a limited tech. And so he picked me up one day and we went and hung out. And he was like, listen, if you're going to do it, don't do it like I did. And this is the most solid advice I can give to a new student. He goes, don't do it like I did. Don't just try to rush in and out of school and get a limited tech license.
Hmm.
It's going to take longer, but go to school for your full ARRT, right?
Hmm.
And he says, long term, it'll be worth it. He goes, you can't work in a hospital with a limited license, and you can't make the same kind of money with a limited license. And so that's what I did. And he was like, this school has a good program, but it's a lottery program.
Hmm.
And for some reason, I said, screw it. I'm gonna put all my eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
And I started going to school for it. And looking back now, like I would never expect from working at a coffee shop. I was riding a bike to work every day in the rain. I was on the phone with like this guy that was like a mentor to me and being like, I'm gonna work minimum wage for the rest of my effing life, bro. And he'd be like, no, you're not. And I'd be like, well, I don't see any way how I'm gonna not. Like I have no skill set that makes me worth more money.
Right.
And X-ray, gave me a kind of a second chance. And I knew a lot of people in my class that were, either like 30-year old, didn't know what to do with their life, finally got into X-ray and it changed their life, or fresh out of school, changed high school, gave them a career. And I also had guys that were like in their 50s in my class, that had gotten bachelor's degrees in certain things that they were no longer making money in. And it was like a second career for them going back to school now. So it really changed my life. And like I said, like I always did creative stuff. Never thought I would be in this, but because I like photography and other things, I think I leaned into it well from looking at it from that aspect.
Absolutely.
And so it still gave me that creative outlet, even though it's a very technical job.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're creating the images, right? Like those images don't just happen, like you're making them happen. And I always like to say, like, we're creating art, but art saves lives, right? Which is like a whole nother level of art. And there's different ways to do art, right? You've mentioned a few. You mentioned diagnostic X-ray, you mentioned fluoroscopy. And what's crazy is that it's not even just limited to that. There's MRI, there's CT, nuclear medicine. So what are some plans for the future? Obviously you're enjoying what you do now. It's absolutely fine just to stay there, but where do you maybe see yourself in the next 5 years?
I mean, you're absolutely correct in what you said, is that there's so many different avenues. Diagnostic X-ray is really just the foundation level. I always tell people it's like a tree, the way it branches off from X-ray. You can do nuclear medicine, radiation therapy, MRI, CT, ultrasound, whatever. You can even become I had a friend that became a radiologist, physician's assistant, an RPA.
Wow.
I don't really know what I want to do at this point. And I'll say it's because I'm my own worst enemy with that, because like I said, I get bored easily. And in order for me to enjoy what I do, I need to keep it fun, interesting. And I know that I love trauma. I'm even making a little bit less money right now than I could, because I want to stay in trauma at where I'm at. And it's what I enjoy. It's what I've kind of specialized my skill set into. And it's what makes me happy right now. But intellectually, I know that like I need to move my career forward. I know I didn't just become a tech to see cool things. I became a tech, or I got this career to make money, support my family, and grow my life.
Right.
I know that logically, but it's an inner battle for me all the time deciding what I want to do. I'll say my future plans right now is I think I'm going to go into CT school probably at the end of the year.
Okay.
And I will say that the advice to other people, and the reason why I'm doing that, is because when you get hired somewhere, they don't pay you based on where you worked or your experience in that aspect. They pay you based on how long you've had a license for. Right. Straight out, Right. And so like I know people who got their CT license later on and make more money as an X-ray tech than they do CT, because they get paid more for their 15 years as an X-ray tech versus their 3 years as a CT tech. So my plan is I feel like, even though I don't think I would ever want to work in CT full time, just be stuck in a room scanning people, right, I would like to have the option. And so I'm going to go to school for that, I think, get that clock started on having that license, maybe do it per diem for a second job,
sure,
on weekends or whatever. But my long-term goal is I want to go back to school for my bachelor's, because I just have my associates in X-ray right now. And so I think I want to go back to my school for my bachelor's, but not in X-ray, in like hospital management.
Right.
Because my whole thinking on it is that having a bachelor's in X-ray is not going to pay you any more money, right, for having, in that line of work. You can't get promoted past a supervisor without a bachelor's. Right. But my whole thing is I'm thinking long-term in the future. Like, my body already is not in great shape. So like, I figure like 20 years from now, if my body's hurting and worn down, I can't do the physical manual labor, whatever of it. Right. I'm thinking about getting my master's degree. This is all plans. Right. Master's degree in public health. And then I would have the option, if I choose to go up into a higher administration, maybe assistant director of a department or something. And I would have the patient care aspect of it, and the business education side of it to know both sides, and still kind of stay in the similar line of work, but just move out of the physically labor taxing aspect of it.
Yes.
That's my plan. We'll see what happens.
That's a great plan. That's a great plan. And just look at all the options that were just thrown in there, right? Like,
yeah,
same thing here. I feel the same. Like X-ray, that level by itself, like you could love it and enjoy it. So sometimes you're not even thinking about another one because it's like, I like where I'm at right now. And there's still a lot to learn here. But you always could do those other ones as like how you laid it out, like as that plan, like if I have to, or just in case, or which is the problem sometimes is that there's just so many options, you know, where other fields,
there are. Yeah.
the problem is there's not any options at all. Like, or if you do want to advance, you do need a bachelor's, right? In this one, you could stay in an associate's and advance from an associate's, you know, on there, which is incredible. It's incredible. So you chose a
Yeah,
great
and that's
field.
kind of my whole thing is I figure like I'm gonna do it now because even though that may not be like you said what I want to do right now, 10 years from now, I might change my mind. So at least I already have myself positioned to do those things. I have options. If I
Right.
don't do anything now and I decide I want to do that, I still have to do all that school before I can do it.
Right.
So, I feel like giving yourself options is important.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Cool. Christopher, it's been an absolute pleasure. Before we wrap it up, anything you'd like to share?
But I think the term button pusher is like, I think sometimes we bring that on ourselves and sometimes doctors and nurses put that on us, right? Because like you said, the very complicated thing that we do. And but a lot of the stuff that nurses and doctors do, you can see happening physically on the outside, what they're doing. And I was talking to my boss the other day, and we were talking about that because I've had doctors say, like, oh, all he does is push a button, just in passing. I hear that. Or, like, can't you do that to the nurse? Or nurses saying they should just incorporate x-ray teaching into our nursing school, you know? And one of the things that I've seen, that I told my boss recently, I said, everything that we do, a lot of it's physics and calculations or like photography like aspects dealing with magnification, image distortion, like all this stuff. We do it in our heads,
Right.
Before we take that x-ray. And they call us button pushers. But I'll say this, like the very last thing we do to get that x-ray is push the button. But that's the only thing that people see, We're worrying about SID for magnification or radiation exposure. We're worrying about shielding, image distortion, all these different things, how to get it to look the way the radiologist needs to see it on a patient that it's not possible really, And so I think that I used to get offended when a lot of people would say that x-ray doesn't get respected in the hospitals, right, for what we do. And like you said, they can't do anything though without seeing our pictures, right? Like they don't know what side to put the chest tube in until they see our picture and stuff. And like, there's been times I've gotten into the shock rooms where doctors have been like, everybody out right now, he's the most important person in the room. And for that moment, I'm just like, yeah, but that's typically not what we get. But I'll say this, I don't like to put it all on the doctors and nurses just being rude. I see a lot of techs that bring that on ourselves too, because things have gotten digital a lot and everything. It's easy to just push a button and submit an image. And when I was in school, they told me, don't just get a diagnostic image, get a pretty picture too. And for me, that's the fundamentals. That's making sure that your marker doesn't look like you just threw it on the picture, like let it bounce like a pair of dice and land wherever it lands. It's knowing marker etiquette. It's collimation. It's annotating your image the correct way, not sitting it upside down, stuff like that. And this is like one of my main points is that I've told students before is that we make good money in this line of work. We can make decent money in lives and careers for ourselves and stuff, especially if you further your career. But if you just get into this line of work for the money, because you think it's an easy job to make money in, and not because you're a compassionate person on some level, or on some level you don't like helping people, you're not going to do well in this line of work and you're not going to last, because either you're going to hate your job or you're going to be bad at it because you're not practicing patient care. And so on some level, I feel like to succeed in this line of work, you have to be one of those two things. And those are the people that make us look like button pushers, I feel like, is because they don't actually have pride in their work anymore.
Right.
And so I think that it's a education on both sides, right? On the doctors and nurses actually understanding what we do, but also us giving them a certain quality of work that earns the respect, you know?
Absolutely.
And I guess I'll just say that, you know, like, hard work pays off. Nobody tells you when that it's actually going to pay off. You know, there's no time frame on that. So, you know, just always put, you know, your best images forward, and enjoy what you do. You know, it's a fun job.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you for pointing that out. Absolutely. And I always kind of use sports as a way to kind of, like, for example, basketball. Like, a lot of people play basketball, right? Like, they'll grab a ball, they go to the park, they know how to dribble, they know how to shoot, but doesn't mean they're good at it. You know what I mean? So when
yeah, you get what you put into it, like anything else.
Absolutely. And when you put into it, when you practice and you get better, well, now things like, okay, now you're in the NBA. And not only are you in the NBA, but you're a starter, right? So it comes down to skill, right? And so when you work on your skill, you're going to see more opportunities, and you get that respect, and you're in much more of a demand versus just somebody who knows how to dribble the ball and shoot a ball, right? So it's skill based, and yeah, you could be way more than just a tech in this field, which is incredible, as long as you keep working on that skill. Christopher, thank you so much for joining. You can find Christopher on TikTok, Instagram. Tag name is Level 1 Drama Tech. Be sure to follow, and we'll definitely follow up. We'll do another episode soon, right?
Yeah, man, I'm down anytime. This was fun.
This was fun. It was a pleasure. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to follow Christopher, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Right.
Cool.
See ya.